Access 2016, Module 1, Part 4. In this segment, we are going to be working with creating a simple form. So let's get started. At the very least, you need to have created the Riverview database, and you need to have the visit table created. Now in the first segment, we created our visit table. Then in the second segment, we added the rest of our data so that we had 75 records. In the last segment, we worked with our simple query wizard to create a query that showed a subset of the information in the visit table. The next thing we're going to look at is creating a form. We're going to do a simple form, and what a form is used for is we can create, it's a list of the fields to view one record at a time. We can also edit and enter data through a form. If you look at the visit table, when we're in datasheet view of our table, we see all of the records that are listed in the table. So you see multiple records at one time. A form allows you to view them one at a time, and they're laid out a little differently on the screen with data entry boxes and field headings to allow us to create those or to enter those fields. Okay, so we're going to start out doing a simple form. So in order to do that, what you want to do is click on the visit table, make sure that is the active object, and then click on this first button that says Form. Now you may not have had this property sheet open. Sometimes it opens if you've had it open before, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. And you can see that it created a form viewing all of our records one at a time. And it has all 5 fields from your table. So notice you have navigational arrows at the bottom. So again, we can move around to the various records using these navigational buttons. If you change data or information here on this form, it will also update the data within our table. Notice it also defaults a heading. This title or heading of our form is defaulted in from the table that created it. So we're going to go ahead and save. Since we did not use a wizard to create this, we do have to come in here and save it. So I'm going to call this Visit Data. When you do that, you'll notice it adds the form over here on your object pane. Now, one thing I did want to show you are the different views. Okay, we have currently in layout view. Layout view, you'll notice the box is what is selected. Okay, allows us to change the size of the fields or the text that's in those boxes. So this allows us to make changes to it. Design view also allows us to make some changes but has a different look to it. It's a gritty look. You'll learn later on some changes we'll make in different views. Okay, but these two views allow us to edit the form. Both form layout view and design view are there for us to make changes. If you switch to form view, you'll notice now that the data is what is highlighted. So if you need to make changes to your records, you need to be in form view. This is where it will allow you to type in any changes to the data. Let's close this, and before we conclude, I'm going to save the changes. Before we conclude this segment, I want to show you what will happen if you have the wrong object selected when you create your form. So if I had opened up the query, and that was the last thing I was looking at, so my query was the active object, and I went to create and then chose form, you'll notice that now my form only has the 3 objects that were in my list query, and it defaulted the name to match the query name. Now, it's harder to spot this if both the query and the table have the same name. In Access, I can have 2 different objects with the same name. I just can't have 2 of the same type of object with the same name. So I couldn't have 2 tables called visit, but I could have a query and a table, both called visit. So it does get a little harder to see if they are named the same. But when you're doing your homework, pay attention to how many fields show up on your form. If only the number of fields show up on the form that are listed on the query, then you have used the query as your starting object. And if you've done that, just simply click the X, say no, then click on the table and go back to your form button on Create, and it'll have all 5 fields. So pay attention to the fields that show up. That will help you from making errors on your SAM submit. And that concludes this segment. I'm going to go ahead and close this and not save it because we already have one. That concludes this segment. And our final segment for Module 1 will be working with a simple report.